So tonight we've got the Philpott fire investigation. We've got Matthew Lee, Station Manager, Prevention and Inclusion Department, Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Services. And I'll come back to you in a minute. And the next meeting we have a journey through ballooning with David Barefoot, a retired consultant haematologist. I'm not going to read all his titles, we'll be here forever. So we've got Matt Lee and Dave Coss. They're specialist fire and explosive investigation officers. Matt has very kindly, he's actually on duty tonight and managed to get cover. He's a station manager and he's going to describe the investigation of a deliberate house fire which resulted in multiple child fatalities, and then explain the subsequent significant research undertaken by watch manager David Coss as part of his MSc. And he assures me that he has achieved his MSc, so congratulations, and he's now working on his PhD, so good luck.
Good. That's the most applause you're going to give it. Trust me.
So I worked with Matt about a year ago doing some safeguarding training, and Matt very kindly said he'd come along and do this talk, so I'd like to hand over to Matt.
I'll wear that, shall I?
Whichever you prefer. I'll leave that for you if you want.
Let's turn it on. How do I turn it on, Dan? It's on now. Okay, good evening everybody. Can you hear me at the back? Yes, brilliant. I took it off because I remember Gordon Brown's embarrassing moment when he got into his car after speaking to me. Remember that? And there was always a danger with Dave and I that we'd do similar things. Well, thank you very much indeed for sitting there and being prepared to listen to us for the next 45 minutes or hour or so. Just to explain that whilst I've got the nicest shirt and I'm a different rank, Dave actually is a full-time fire investigator. He runs our fire dog and he works for the East Midlands. So Dave's dedicated role is going out to serious fires day in, day out across the county, sometimes further afield. So my job in the day is to manage a prevention team. So I run the prevention side of Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Service, and my contact with doctors is generally around trying to protect the vulnerable people that are living in the community, maybe in resi care. And my fire investigation role is a bolt-on role. But I have about 10 colleagues of my rank, and we turn out to fires, we try to put fires out, and we command fire crews, and we investigate them when they go wrong, because the judges and the courts and the coroners, they like to see people like me with all this stuff on their shoulders in the court explaining why it happened, but actually the clever guys standing in the corner. So what I'm proposing to do this evening is just explain how we run a fatal fire investigation. We do that in conjunction with the police. In fact, we work pretty much for the police until the fire's been proven to be innocent. It's always assumed that it's a deliberate fire, in which case the police will always have primacy over that investigation. So we work with them, to them. And once we've gone through that investigation with you, then Dave's going to explain some subsequent research we did, because, and I appreciate you've had a buffet, and I appreciate you would probably want a light-hearted presentation. It's going to be kind of difficult to make this too light-hearted because we had 6 children die, but there was some benefit from it. We found 6 children in their beds. They hadn't moved. The pathologist assured us there was nothing suspicious in their bloodstream other than smoke. So we came to the conclusion that they died from smoke inhalation in their beds. But we knew, as the presentation will show you, that the smoke alarms were working. So that was of some concern. I spent the last 22 years promoting smoke alarm ownership in people's homes, and to find 6 children of various ages hadn't responded to the smoke alarm was very disturbing. So we're quite lucky that Dave's here, because Dave's undertaken this research, and it's upset people. It's challenged the establishment, it's challenged the British standards around smoke alarm ownership, and it's been quite uncomfortable for some. So I hope you'll enjoy what he has to say. Right, where's my clicker? Operation Morgan. This, as you probably, if you've worked with the police or if you watch police shows, they always give their sort of investigations that are quite large a name, don't they? I don't know why they came up with Operation Morgan.
Just thrown out the computer.
Just the computer decided to call it Operation Morgan. And this is a result of a fire that occurred on the 11th of May. I'm going to hand over to Dave in a moment, who's going to, on the back of this video, explain what happened from a fire response point of view. So when the fire got called in and how we actually tackled with the fire. Once you set the scene, if you like, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to explain how we did the investigation. And then we'll see if you're still awake. And if you are, we'll ask Dave to carry on.
All right, good evening, everybody. What we got, first of all, appreciate 2012, so we're nearly 4 years out now. So what we've got is a little clip. It's about a 3-minute long video, and it's an edited video of the events around that night, just to put you back in that mind frame, just to get you back into the case. There's no photographs of dead bodies or anything like that, so there's nothing that should traumatise you. The worst we're going to get is Mairead's 3-9's call, which is a little bit dramatic, but if you look at it from the point of view of it's staged dramatic as opposed to it is dramatic, then that should see you through. So we'll play this and see what happens.
My house is on fire, my kids are in bed.
Yes, what address?
18 Victory Road, Mrs. Philpott.
Mrs. Philpott. How many kids are in the house, Mrs. Philpott? Where are they?
I'm sick of them.
Are there any flames there?
Oh my God, please.
All right, we've got the fire service coming on the way.
I can't get my back in the kitchen. I'm sick of them.
Is it a terraced house? Yeah, we've got the police on the way. Have you any idea what's caused the fire?
I've no idea, mate, but it's been woke up by day long.
There's smoke everywhere.
I can't get out.
Okay, what's your name, please?
I can't do it. There's no noise from the children. There's no noise from the children.
They're coming in now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for gathering. This is a very sad day. Emergency services were called to a house fire on Victory Road in Allington at 3:46 a.m. this morning. Sadly, I can now confirm that 5 children have died. The 6th child has been transferred to hospital. There appears to have been some valiant attempts by the father of the children to rescue his children.
First of all, I want to thank my 3 oldest children because they helping us to cope with what's going on. And then there's a young lad called Daniel Stevenson who tried to get in the house the same as myself, Joe across the road, and the Butler brothers. And of course there's the poor firemen, the police, and the ambulances, the doctors, the nurses, literally everybody who tried to help save our children. They couldn't. Excuse me a minute.
That last interview was supposed to be a police appeal for witnesses to anything that happened. The press conference lasted 12 minutes, and never once during that 12 minutes did he ever ask for help in finding who'd started that fire. He spent the whole time saying how good he was and how good his friends were and everything else. So with hindsight, you can see exactly what's happening, but at the time, it's just another cog in the wheel of the investigation that we're going through. What I'm going to do... sorry. Right. There is another video, but I'm going to skip through it, otherwise we'll be all night. So my job now is to take you through what exactly the fire crews did, what they presented with, how they operated, how they rescued the children, and then Matthew's going to take you through the actual investigation that followed. So my job is just a scene set, in effect. So Friday, 11th of May, 2012, 03:47 hours, the first call is received by Derbyshire Police. It doesn't go through to the fire service, it goes through to the police. Initially, we're thinking, what's the problem? Why haven't they asked for a fire service? In reality, what's happened is when they've made the call, they've asked for all 3 services, and the operators put them through to the police first. That's the only reason. Okay, so initially it looks a bit odd, but it's not. She says that there's a house fire and that all 6 children are still trapped inside the building. We then have a little bit of a stroke of luck in the sense that the nearest fire station is about 6-7 minutes away. But where this house is, literally across the road from this house, is a police station. And there's 2 police officers that are on duty and that are sat having a cup of tea in the police station. Because the call goes through to the police first, whilst they're transferring it to the fire service, what they also then do is they also then tip their own police officers out as well. Right. The result is we have 2 police officers stood outside the front door within a minute and a half of the initial call, which again, fire service wise, we could never have made that attendance time. And they report to us that when they get outside the front door, there is no fire on the outside of the property whatsoever. All the fire is inside. There is a small hole about tennis ball size at head height, and there's a raging fire behind the door. They can't get through that door, so there's nobody outside the front, but they can't get through the door. So what they then do is run round the back of the property to try and gain access from the back. Whilst they're doing that, several neighbours turn up. They attempt to gain access through the front door, but they're now reporting, because the front door is now fully involved in fire, that the fire is on the outside of the property. So we've now got fire outside the front door and inside the front door at the same time. Ascot Drive, which is the nearest fire station to the scene, they arrive on scene. Whilst they're en route, they get past the message, which is the message that every firefighter dreads, in that it is a confirmed fire and it is confirmed persons reported. That to us is a bit like man down to the police. It means that there are confirmed people inside the building that can't escape, and we know now it's time critical. It's the worst nightmare call we can get, and then you times that by 6, because we've now got 6 children confirmed inside the property. So you can try and imagine what's going through the firefighters' minds as they're attending the scene. The other bit of information they were given, which we'll come back to later, is that all 6 children were in the rear bedroom. So not only did they say they were trapped inside, they actually told us which room they were in. They were all in the rear bedroom. First thing the officer in charge does is he commits his breathing apparatus team through the front door to search and rescue. Go straight for the children, straight up the stairs, snatch the kids, get them out, save their lives. That's the plan.
Breathing apparatus, Dave?
Breathing apparatus, sorry, is the face mask that we have with the big oxygen tanks. We're very good in the fire service at acronyms and everything like that, but in reality, it allows us to breathe fresh air. A bit like a scuba diving set for smoke, if that's the best way of saying it. Frightens the life out of normal people. When you're lying in bed at night and you wake up and you've got this mask breathing at you, it makes you jump. But so this is a plan of the first floor. So we've got the front of the property there, the caravan that you could see there, and then the bathroom, and then the stairs coming up to the first floor, and the 3 bedrooms on the first floor. So the first team in have come straight up the stairs, straight for that back bedroom where they're expecting to find 6 children. In they go, and they find 1 child, fast asleep in bed, blankets tucked in, just happily sleeping. So they rescue that 1 child, they run straight back outside, they dump that child on the pavement, they turn around and they run straight back in again. Now we've got a problem because we're only riding 4 firefighters on the truck, on the fire engine. We've got 2 of them in breathing apparatus running in and out, we've got 1 of them powering all the water, and we've got 1 of them in charge. We've not got any medical staff to start looking after the casualties. So we're already in trouble.
Yes, I think we should explain. She wasn't asleep. She just looked like she was asleep.
Yeah, to be fair, she's probably already dead by this point, but yeah. I was trying not to be very clinical. I forget who I'm talking to. So they've gone back in. When they go back in this time, what they do then is they go to the second room. They've already searched that first room. They're happy there's only 1 child in that room. So they then go for the second room. And at this point, and you'll see from the photographs, there's a double bunk bed in the second room, and there's 2 children sleeping on the bottom bunk. But 1 of them has slightly fallen off to one side. So when the crew go in, they sweep the bunk, they find the child, but they don't find another child. They then carry that child out. We then get a situation where the next fire engine arrives, and a more senior officer, a watch manager, takes over the job, and he then commits his breathing apparatus team as well. So we've now got 4 people inside the building searching for the children. But now we have a little bit of confusion in the sense that Kingsway are now on the way in and Ascot Drive are on the way out, and they meet at the head of the staircase. Now I'm sure most of you will live in what I would call a normal home, where your staircase is probably about 6 to 8 feet as the maximum, head of the stairs, yeah? You put 4 firefighters with all their kit on and all their oxygen tanks in that room, they're actually quite tightly packed in. The crew coming out have got a child in their arms, and the crew going in, and they have a quick conversation, but somewhere along the lines there's a bit of confusion, and we end up with the second team going in and going back into that bedroom. The confusion's added to because when they go back into that bedroom, they now find another child on the bottom bunk, which is where the crew's just rescued the other child from. So when they bring their child out, we've now got 3 children, 2 of them rescued from the same bed in effect. This is now compounded even worse because the first ambulance that pulls up literally pulls up, opens the back doors as they're coming out with the child and just waves them straight in. So they go straight in the back of the ambulance, dump the child, and they then take another child, put that one in the ambulance, and the ambulance goes. We think 1 child's gone to hospital. In reality, 2 have gone. So we now have a bizarre situation when the third appliance arrives and we commit even more breathing apparatus teams in. So we've now got 6 breathing apparatus wearers in the property. Ascot Drive, the first crew in, now think there should be 2 children in that back bedroom, and they think they've only rescued 1. When they talk to Kingsway, they get confused about who's rescued the child off the bed. They both think they've rescued the same casualty, therefore the second casualty is still in that room. So they go back into that room to look for the second casualty in that room. The other crews come in, and they go straight into the front room, and they rescue the remaining 3 children from that room. So we're now in a situation where we've got 4 children lined up outside. We think 1's gone to hospital. So we're missing 1. We've only got 5 and we should have 6. In reality, 2's gone to hospital, so we've got all 6. So what happens then is the fire crews are then going over and over and over all ground and trying to search and research to try and find the child, because we spend a lot of time on human behaviour in fires and what children will do in fires. The majority of children will hide from a fire. They will get under the bed, they will lock themselves in the cupboard, they'll do anything to get away from the fire. So we're now sending crews back in, upending beds, opening cupboards, pulling drawers out, anywhere where a small child could get. And it's not until 15, 20 minutes later, and all the confusion starts to quieten down, that they actually realise they've got 2 at hospital, and we've got 4. So we have actually got all 6. But bear in mind, this is taking place at 4 o'clock in the morning, in pitch black, with everybody screaming and shouting and running all around you. So you can understand why that confusion just gets compounded and compounded. We then get the first station manager to arrive, so of Mr. Lee's rank, first officer in charge comes to take over the scene, and we have a second stroke look. This gentleman, he's actually retired from the service now, but he was getting ready to retire, so he'd been taken off fire investigation, ready for winding down. But he turned up to this job and he noticed straight away that the only way in and out of this property was that front door. You can't get round the back. You can only get through that front door. So he shouted to the troops to lay down what we call a salvage sheet, which you'll see in the pictures, a big green sheet over the doorway, which then puts a block between anything underneath and anything we drag over the top. So it's preserving the evidence that's underneath. Belting moved because it managed to secure us our evidence for later on, as you'll see. So all that's took me 10 minutes to explain to you. That probably happened in about 3 or 4 minutes flat. It was that fast. It would have been bang, 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 job done. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to walk you through the scene. So this is pre-investigation. This is before Matt's got to the scene. This is just the scenes of crime photographs recording the scene before anything is done. So this is the scene that was as is when we turned up. So you've got your front door, so you can see where the front door is. You can see the remains of the salvage sheet that's on the floor. This is the caravan that was at the side of the property. And then the other thing to note is that the front window was open at the time of the fire, which is something that Matt will refer to later on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go round the back, which is the way the police officers came. On the night, the police officers lifted this fence panel straight out of there to give them access into the back garden. What it also did was give Mick and Ray Philpott access out of the back garden because they were trapped in the back garden. They then run round the front and are running up down the street screaming and shouting and winding everybody up. Okay? So you've got, it's a semi-detached house. There's the fence line, so that's next door. This is 18. You've got a conservatory built on the end, and then you've got a games room, as it's referred to, built onto the end of that. So into the back garden. The tents that you can see, bear in mind, and this whole event, as you'll see as it unfolds, is based around the children. Up until 5 weeks prior to this fire, there was 3 adults and 11 children living at this address. Okay? And the older children, if they wanted any privacy, any room of their own, then they had a tent in the back garden. That was their bedroom, in effect. So there was 2 or 3 tents in the back garden, and that's where the older children slept. So we're going to go in through the games room door, which is this door here, into the games room. That is a full-size snooker table. All the lighting and everything is plumbed in. Everything's up and running. And then that is the back doors to the conservatory. So we go through the conservatory, into the conservatory itself. Got the obligatory 100-inch flat-screen TV and the world's noisiest parrot sat in there squirking.
This is where Mick and Mairead slept, in this room.
So on the night of the fire, they're saying they were both asleep on this settee here. Up until the partner leaving, Mick actually slept in the caravan out the front, and the women slept here, and they alternate nights changed to the caravan.
I think just it's worth briefly explaining, just for clarity,
The
that
background.
Mick had 2 partners with 11 children between them, and he had a fallout with one of the women, and she left. She's the lady that left the 5 weeks previous, taking 5 children with her, and that became quite important because with those 5 children going away, quite a lot of child benefit went away as well.
So this is all about
became important.
It's made to look like it's a custody battle. In reality, it's a custody battle for the money. When she leaves, she takes £400 a week off him because her benefits, the children's benefits, her wages, which were being paid into his bank account, she didn't have a bank account. So when she left and went to a women's refuge and took the children, he lost £400 a week. So his whole plan is to get her in trouble with the police, get her locked up. Because he is the biological father of the children, they would have to come back to him. Therefore, the benefits would come back to him as well. That was his plan.
Well, that's a theory, anyway, a hypothesis the police put together.
Yeah, that's our plan. So that is actually the back door of the property, the house itself. Into the kitchen, brand spanking new kitchen, fitted 3 days prior to the fire. It's a council property, council had fitted a brand new kitchen. So you've got the back door to the kitchen there. That door that you can see there is the door to the understairs pantry, and the door to the living room is actually down the side of the fridge. So if you go into the living room, you can just see the bottom of the door, and then you've got a table and chairs. There's no cushions on the chairs or anything like that. There's no other furniture within this room. This is as it is. We've not touched it.
Dave, just go back, please. Could you just see how clean the walls are? There's no smoke damage on that wall, is there at all? Yet the perpetrator, or Mr. Philpott, suggested that he tried to get to his children through this room, and the door of the kitchen that opens up into the room on the next slide was closed. There's huge amounts of smoke damage there, isn't there? Can you see it all on the walls?
See all the soot up here, look.
And it would be a reasonable assumption if he'd gone through the kitchen into this room to have seen some smoke products sticking on the kitchen walls, but there weren't any. It was very clean. Thanks, Dave.
So we're now going to go looking here, looking into the hallway. So the photograph on the left is looking from the lounge into the bottom of the staircase. Again, you can see the silver sheet that we've got laid out, and then this is the architravian and the pine wood that's then going up the staircase, and then the picture on the right is just looking straight back down the staircase. So this is the fire that the firefighters have had to go through to get to the children. Okay. Worst case scenario fire for us is a fire at the base of a staircase, because if you imagine a coal fire at the bottom of a chimney, where is the hottest part of that fire? The top of the chimney. You put it on a slight angle now, and you've got a staircase. Where is the hottest part of the fire? It's the top of the staircase. So all of that fire, so they're actually going up past the fire and up into the heat, which is a big problem for them. So if you keep your eye on that, you can just see there's a spindle missing there. The next photograph, there's the missing spindle. So we're actually talking about 3 or 4 foot square at the top of the stairs, if that. And we've got 6 firefighters at one point in that area, all passing each other and bumping into each other. But if you notice, there's no more fire past that point. The fire's not got past the top of the staircase. So Jade's bedroom, when you come up here and you go straight through the back there, that's Jade's bedroom. So we go into Jade's bedroom. A couple of things to note. The clean bits you can see is where the plastic's melted off the walls. So it's where the plastic front fascias of the cupboards have fallen down. And the reason why you've got clean bedding is because the fire crew didn't neatly fold the pillars back and take the child. They just grabbed child, pillars, everything, and gone. So the actual duvet that was over the child is now outside with the child as well. Into the second bedroom then, and if you remember, this is the bedroom where all the problems were. This is the bedroom where we thought we'd still got a child missing. So this is the bedroom that we've actually turned over and turned over and turned over to the point where you can see cupboard doors have been clean ripped off cupboards. Every hole big enough to take a child has been emptied. Everything absolutely emptied completely, which is what crews will do. Keep going and keep going and keep going until they find that child, if that child is in there. And then finally the front bedroom. 3 children rescued from this bedroom. Other things to note here, there are no door handles on any of the doors. So at no time could you shut any of these doors. There's no means of shutting the door at all. And you've got 2 double bunk beds here, and it's a bit of a bizarre situation. The bunk beds run like that, but the mattresses run across the bunk beds, as you'll see in the next picture. So your bunk beds run that way, but your mattresses run that way. The top bunk wasn't being used, so 3 children sleeping on this bottom bunk. The one that survived the longest, Dwayne, was actually rescued from that top corner. He was rescued, brought out alive, went to Derby Royal and was immediately transferred to Birmingham Children's and died in Birmingham the following day. But his death, even though they calculated his burns, they said 30% burns, but his death certificate still says smoke inhalation. So it's the smoke inhalation that's killed him. So that's it from the job's point of view. So that is a brief sort of, this is what happened, this is how we did it, this is why we did it. What you've then got is an investigation team put together, which Mr. Lee was in charge of, and what he's going to do now is he's going to take you through that investigation. Okay?
Thank you, Dave. Can you still hear me all right at the back? It's difficult, isn't it, to sort of put across, I think, how tragic this job was. We don't see many fires involving the deaths of children. I've seen quite a few in my time, but it's not a regular event. And it was pretty devastating. It was particularly difficult because of Mick Philpott's notoriety. I think it was Anne Widdicombe did a programme with him several years ago. Do you remember it? Because he was refusing to work, so she got him a job, and he then didn't contribute. So there was quite a lot of media interest in the case. So if we come across as uncaring, I apologise. We were, all of the fire service, devastated by this loss. However, the death happened, and when Dave refers to rescuing, you may be sitting there thinking, well, it wasn't a rescue, was it, Matt, because they died? Well, firefighters are trained, unless it's obvious the person is deceased, they're trained to take people out because people can be revived. It's very difficult when you've got breathing apparatus on in a smoky environment, when you've got thick gloves to check for signs of life. So unless somebody's body's really destroyed, we would remove them, particularly with children. They do have quite high recovery rates, don't they? However, these children sadly died, and on scene. The scene was chaotic, with lots of firefighters and ambulance people trying to revive the children amidst a lot of confusion. So it's very tragic, but I wasn't involved in any of that trauma. I wasn't there. I was in bed. And I got a phone call from one of the senior officers, and they said, Matt, we've got a job on. We've got a job on. And he explained what the job was. He explained the political sensitivity to it. 6 children died. There's going to be a lot of interest from the press, but there's also going to be a lot of scrutiny of the schools. Did the schools pick up on a problem? Was social services negligent? Did the fire service do its job properly? Were the police aware of any problems? This is all before anybody's even come up with how the fire started. So there's a lot of interest. So he said, right, what we need you to do is get a fire investigation team together. It's a no-brainer that we'd have Dave, because Dave, as well as having a vast amount of experience, also has, at the time, Freckle, the fire dog. And I had another colleague, quite remote from Derby, to come and assist. And we took the unusual step of, rather than doing this job as an additional bit of work and then going back to my day job, we stopped everything and we ran the investigation pretty much full-time for how long, Dave?
Oh, a good 3-4 weeks at the job.
At least 3 or 4 weeks dedicated to this scene. And obviously the investigation took a bit longer. So what I'll perhaps do now is dispassionately talk to you about the investigation, because it's quite interesting how we come to the conclusions we come to. I'll have to click the slide to remind me what we were told. We didn't go to the scene. I didn't go straight to the fire. There was enough people there. We went to our local fire station, where we met the head of the police crime scenes investigation, we met the crime scene investigator, or maybe a couple of them, and we met the forensic scientist who was going to work with the investigation team. Because at the moment, this is a crime scene, so the police have primacy, and they wanted a decent team of people together. So we met at the fire station, and we started to gather evidence. And one of the first bits of information we were given by the police, the detectives that were there, that Mr. Philpott claimed that 2 adults were responsible because they'd been claiming that they would fire the house. These were relatives or boyfriends of the partner that had left. He'd shown police text message on mobile phone making threats, so that he's received threats. And 2 people were arrested. I think it says so on here. 2 adults were arrested on suspicion of murder. These related to the ex-partner of Philpott. He'd framed them basically, but they were arrested. And Dave was involved in going down and checking their house for any signs of accelerant, and we'll come on to that. He told the police that they'd made threats to burn my house down. Now, if you remember what Dave alluded to earlier on, my colleague Trevor, who's now retired, he got to that scene and he looked at that house fire and he looked at the burn signatures and he looked at the damage, and he immediately thought, this is a suspicious fire. And we always think like that, unless we could prove otherwise. But he was very switched on in preserving that. So he was as happy as he could be. This was a deliberately set fire, which is why we managed to secure the scene. On the 11th of May, we went to Ascot Drive Fire Station. Didn't go to the fire scene. We met all these different agencies I told you about to plan a strategy. How are we going to approach this job? Because we want to get it right. If somebody is responsible and they can be found, we don't want the person to evade justice because we've done something wrong during the investigation or compromised the investigation. We had a further meeting with the forensic scientist. Now, I have to say, I don't get on very well with forensic scientists. We always have a battle about who's in charge, because forensic scientists are cleverer than me, more educated than me, but they never actually have to go and give the evidence in court. The court seem to like the firemen, so I need to be able to understand. So it's very difficult. Forensic scientists have to be educated to talk to me in quite simple language so that I can understand what they're saying. But we get there, don't we? Dave gets on with forensic scientists very well. You know, I said I'm a simple man. Well, you've seen the really nice graphics of the property that Dave showed you. Well, my mate Trevor came to talk to us about the fire, and we drew a map of the house, very crude map. But what's significant is the picture on your left where we've got ×1, ×2, ×3. Well, they're actually the numbers of children that were removed from the bedrooms, but we actually named those rooms 1, 2, 3. And from that crude drawing and that crude layout and the descriptor of those rooms was used throughout the investigation. And that's absolutely essential, because if you don't have that discipline, what happens is different organisations or different people in the investigation start referring to different types of, giving different names to rooms, and it can become very, very confusing. An architect might tell you that number 3 would be bedroom number 1 because it's at the front of the house. A copper might, or of good breeding, might call that the living room rather than the lounge. And the conservatory might have been the lounge. Do you see what I mean? So this simple agreement of what we were going to call each room became very important during the investigation. Right. Dave took Freckle, the dog, to the lady that had been arrested to search the house to see if there were any accelerants. Petrol is really difficult to get off your clothing, and it's very difficult to chuck about and not get it splashed. You can wash it very, very high temperatures and it still remains in your clothing. So had the lady been involved, there was an outside chance that there'd be some petrol found at her house, and Dave went along and there was nothing found. Again, the male who'd been arrested, his property was searched and there was nothing found. And by Saturday afternoon, their alibi stood up and they were released. I don't expect you to read those statements, but essentially we were working with the police. We interviewed and identified where people lived on Victory Road. We looked at the witness statements, and we spent literally hours reading through witness statements. Now, you'll probably know a little bit more about the human mind and how it works than I do, but what was very clear is people can have false memories. So they may experience something themselves, but then when they talk to somebody else that was also at the event, that person's memory becomes part of their memory. So extrapolating what was factual and what was not factual was quite a challenge. So, for example, one chap said he could see fire from his bedroom window, but when we went to the address, it was a flame. You could see orange flame. It was quite impossible for that to have occurred because there was a great big white van in the way. Can you see? So some people lie maliciously, and some people just lie without realising. So looking through the witness statements was very important for us to get us in our minds a pen picture of that fire development. How quickly did it grow, and how could we back that up? So we use witness statements. Have I missed anything on this slide,
No.
Dave?
No, that was the thing about not being able to see.
Yeah. And the Have a Go heroes, there is no doubt that there was some attempts made by some or one person to try to get into the property, but they weren't the valiant attempts that were reported in the press. That press statement from the Chief Constable and following appeal by Mick Philpott was all part of a strategy set up very early on by the police, I have to say, quite brightly, wisely, to see if they could actually build some false confidence in Mr. Philpott and find out the truth through other means. And Mr. Philpott and Mairead were covertly recorded all the way through this process, and what they said to each other was very illuminating. Right, let's go to the kitchen. Mick Philpott said they heard the alarm, and him and Mairead walked through the kitchen into the lounge, and Mairead said the window was open and there was a big flash of flame. Mick said he got to the door of the downstairs base of stairs and there was a fire, but then there was a whoosh. But he said the window was shut. He said the window was shut and the curtains were closed. Why is that significant? Well, it is, and I'll tell you why later on if I may. But bear in mind how much fire damage you've got in the lounge. I'll come around here to show you. This is the lounge. If you look to the right of the door, you've got soot deposits on the top of the table, and you've got soot and smoke coming from sort of hip height, haven't you, on the wooden paneling. Around the door front, you can see that above the handle, well, sorry, below it there's a melted plastic bag, just slightly melted. Above it you've got some smoke, and if that would close, and you're looking at this side of the door, so that's just a bit of overpressure where you've got gaps around the door. But what you haven't got in the kitchen, recently refurbished I might add, is any smoke deposits at all. So I'm not happy that that door was open and that Mick Philpott went in for any considerable time into the fire room. The window, he said, was shut and the curtains were drawn, and we know it wasn't. And we know the window was open because of the way that the smoke has come out of the window. It's quite simple to see that now, but believe me, it took us a bit of time persuading the jury of this, because the defence said, well, the window was opened by firefighters. Well, it may well have been opened a bit wider by firefighters, but the fact of the matter is there wasn't a raging fire in the lounge. It had flashed over, but the main bulk of the fire was in the hallway going up the staircase. There would have been no need for all that smoke, etc., to hit that window. It wouldn't have been physically possible for it to, or it wouldn't have needed to get there had the window been closed, because it would have been essentially going into a box. So we would have seen a very even pattern across the ceiling of the lounge as the lounge filled up with smoke. But what in fact happened, so pointer here,
Yeah.
is this window's opened up. Forgive this, me moving into this picture, the hallway's here, the fire's gone up the staircase, but it's also tracked to its vent. It's tracked to a vent through the lounge to this window here, which is why you see all this blackening. It's pummeled out of there like a chimney, and it's cracked this window. That window cracked when we put cold water on it. Fire crews, incidentally, said the window was open when they arrived, and they poured water on it. But we can't rely in an investigation on things people say. It certainly adds to the picture, and we'd report it in a report and to the jury. But if we can physically prove things were happened forensically prove it, it helps. So we can prove this window was open. And if that's not enough of a signature, with all the smoke going up there, on the hinges here, you can actually see what position the window was open, because all the smoke's landed on the hinge. And when you open it, you can see the clean bit. Yeah? Okay. Oh, I like this bit. We went down, Dave and I were going down to Surrey on a fire investigation course, which was boring, wasn't it? But we were chatting, this is a few weeks after the initial investigation, but well before court. And we were saying, well, what have we missed? Have we missed anything? Because the defence, there were 3 defendants, and the defence experts, fire people, had been employed by the barristers, and there was 3 separate firms. 3 separate defence experts could come and go all over this house again. And we were saying, what have we missed? We were saying, well, Mick says the window was open, was shut, and we know it's open, so we know he's lying on that score, because we think that was a route out for a petrol can. We think, how did he get rid of a petrol can? Probably out the window. And we said, well, hang on a minute. He could argue he didn't know the window was open. He thought it was shut because he shut it, but he didn't know it was open because the curtains were shut. We thought that would be a good defence, wouldn't it? I thought the window was shut because I closed it, but I couldn't have seen it because the curtains were shut. So we came all the way back from Surrey, got the police to let us back into the property, and we examined the curtain pole. Have you all put curtains up in your lifetimes? Right, this is important then. It's curtain rings around this curtain pole, and the curtain was attached to these rings by plastic curtain hooks. And this curtain, as you can see, all these rings are spread open, so the curtain was drawn to the middle of the window. Okay? Now, we found the remnants of this curtain on the floor, pretty much intact, because what's happened, to the left of the image is where the main seat of the fire was, in the hallway. The fire's come this way to go out of what was the open window. And what's happened, heat has hit these plastic hooks. Because the curtain is spread over some distance, as soon as these plastic hooks start to melt, the weight of it pulls it down, and it landed out of the fire and pretty much intact. So we know with some certainty that that curtain was drawn at the time of the fire. The other side, though, was not. This curtain was pretty badly burned and found at the bottom of the wall, where potentially another seat of fire could have happened, so another area where the fire started. Well, it was quite easy to prove that this curtain had taken some time to fail. You know, when you're putting a curtain up, it's easier if you clump it together, isn't it? It's not as heavy. When it's spread out, it becomes heavier. Exactly the same principle in a fire situation. The curtain was bunched together, so it took longer for it to fail. So in actual fact, as the fire's whipping out the window, can't really see it, can you? My pointer's gone. As the fire's whipping out the window there, it's burning up the curtain, and eventually it fails, but by this time it's truly on light and drops down. You'll see there's no clean marks. These curtain hooks or rings were where they were at the time of the fire. So again, we could prove with some certainty that those curtains were open. The street was well lit. It is inconceivable that Mr. Philpott didn't know the window was open. And the jury believed us. There we are. Just to give you we went back to the police station. We spread all the curtains out to see if our hypothesis stood up, and I think you'd probably agree with me that it does. You can see where it's failed and fallen there, and this is basically burnt all the way up. In fact, the most intact part of the curtain is the bit on the bottom because the fire's whipped up that way. So does that paint that picture for you? Oh, good. Right, base of the staircase, what we do, a bit like archaeologists, we'll have a look at what is on the top level of the fire and work out where it came from. And most of the stuff was dropped down from the ceiling as the fire had sort of raged and broke some of the plasterboard. The plasterboard's a very good insulator in fire, by the way. So we began to excavate dig stuff away, quite a painstaking job to see if we could identify anything in the fire debris that may have been responsible for the start of the fire. And this is the doormat, is it, Dave?
Yeah, that's external doormat.
External doormat. Now, did we find petrol on that external doormat? We didn't, did we? We didn't. Because the inference was that someone had come up and sloshed petrol. Massively important, this. You can't believe... I found it very interesting how important the small details were. But a defence was, someone's done it to me. Someone's set fire to me. So you would expect to see or have some petrol deposits found on that outside step. None at all. Also, I don't think you'll be able to see particularly well, from the way the door has burnt away, and it's pretty much completely destroyed, but it leaves some interesting signatures. There's more door on the outside than there is on the inside. So we're as happy as we can be that the fire's raged behind. Equally, the way the door frame bows, it bows towards the inside rather than outside. So it's a UPVC door, it's burnt towards the inside of the house. So again, we're quite happy that whilst the witness statements support the fact the fire was inside, that we can prove it by explaining to the jury how we know that the door's burnt from the inside out. And Freckle. Now in retirement, I understand?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Once we'd excavated a couple of layers, Freckle indicated, and it's really the first time I saw a fire dog perform, which was how many years ago now?
Ooh, well, 13 odd years.
30. I got ever so excited. I thought it would do something phenomenal when it found petrol, but it doesn't. It just stands still like that. So when Freckle stopped moving, we knew we'd got petrol. And this was quite important because up until this point, up until the excavation, we hadn't. Even though we knew it, we thought it was an accelerated fire, we couldn't prove it. We looked all around the area to see what could have caused the fire. We excluded electrical sockets. We excluded a light fitting that we found. There was remnants of a mobile phone, I think, in the fire debris. There was no rational explanation for how that fire could have started accidentally, but equally, we couldn't find a reason for how it would have started deliberately. But then Freckle pulled one out of the bag and indicated. So we were then able to take a sample. The forensic scientist then came in and took a sample away, which was analysed as petrol. There we are. That's how we identify it for the photographer. The brown paper bag is just to show you that, I suppose a bit like an autopsy, we absolutely remove everything. We have to log everything, make sure that we've not missed anything. And in fact, we've spent quite a bit of time sieving through the fire debris to see if we could find evidence. And we did. We found little springs and tiny little batteries, which turned out to be from an alarm panel and a smoke alarm. We employed, well, the police employed forensic electrical engineers, as well as the forensic scientists, to look at all the different electrical components that we found to see if they were responsible. Was it a bomb? Had we missed it? No, it wasn't. Mick Philpott suggested that he had a petrol strimmer, and that might be why there's petrol in the hall, because his mate used to drop milk bottles off of petrol for him to fill his strimmer. But we were happy we found petrol. We looked all around this property. We looked at pictures to see if there's something what was in the hallway before the fire, and it was very sterile. There was plasterboard on that wall. Up here was wooden panels. Yes, you can see replicated at the top of the staircase. Huge fire, definitely burnt from upstairs, from down to top. And the signatures that we see on the staircase showed us that it had gone that way. We were concerned with the burns on the eldest lad, that he might have had something to do with the fire, maybe come down and set it and then run up. But we couldn't find any evidence to support that at all, could we? But we had to consider it. The picture to the top right just shows you how we can confirm what position the door was in when the fire was occurring. Mick said he went and opened the door. There was a big whoosh, so he shut the door. It's clearly not the case. That door was open. That area, you can't see it very well, I'm afraid, but that's a completely protected area of carpet, which means the door was over it when the fire came through. The picture bottom right, that's polystyrene ceiling tiles. Do you remember me telling you that the fire flashed through the lounge? That's what would have helped with the flash. Mick Philpott said he tried to rescue his children from the back bedroom. The reason he reported them in the back bedroom is that was the plan. They were told they would wake up the smoke alarm and go into the back bedroom. So that's where he was expecting them, but they weren't there. He didn't attempt to break the window. He may have gone up on the ladder, but he certainly didn't break any windows. Our firefighters did those windows, and I can show you how we know that. There was a ladder there. There was a tennis racket on the top of the roof, but once we looked at it, we were quite satisfied it hadn't been used to break the glass. And the reason is, we can tell by can you see there's two layers to this double glazed panel? And can you see the soot deposits on it? Well, on this panel, you've got soot on the inside of the second pane, so of the exterior pane. If you imagine a double glazed windows like that, that's the outside pane, going to outside, and this is the interior pane. Well, we've got smoke on that pane, and we've got smoke on that pane. That can only occur if this inside pane is broken, and we knew it had been. The outside pane wasn't broken until much later by firefighters. This pane here was not broken. And had this pane been broken by Mr. Philpott, we'd expect to see soot and smoke on this inside glass edge. Because what would he have created if he'd smashed that window when the fire's raging downstairs? He'd have created another chimney, wouldn't he? So we'd expect to see what we saw here on this glass, but we didn't. This glass was, social workers reported, been broken for some time, the inside pane. Plus we looked at the glass on the outside, and actually we found some clean glass there, didn't we? Yeah, I'm going, Dave, I'm going. Philpott said he was asleep in the conservatory. He was woken by the smoke alarm. He went into the lounge and saw the fire at the base of the staircase, and he ran into the garden and phoned 999. He said there might have been petrol at this scene and on his clothing because he used the garden strimmer. There it is. We found it. We chested the petrol. He said, because we found petrol on him, he said he hadn't changed his pants for 12 weeks because that's when he last trimmed his garden. The senior investigating officer fully involved us throughout the investigation, which was very helpful. We did a forensic review of evidence. There were smoke detectors. There was no reason why these smoke detectors weren't working. There was no evidence at all the smoke detectors weren't working. In fact, we believe they were, and the neighbours heard them. We were scrutinised by an independent fire investigation team from London. They came up and had a look at our investigation. They were quite satisfied with everything we'd done, including and the forensic scientist was scrutinised as well. And whilst we managed to find petrol in that hallway and petrol on Mick, we couldn't really do any more than say it was petrol. So one of Dave's colleagues in the science world had a very clever machine which can identify additives that are put in petrol, so it's possible to actually brand match the petrol to the particular petrol station, to the particular sample, to the stuff on the clothing. And it was Shell and Total on Mr. Philpott's clothing, and the petrol found on Mairead's clothing was Total, and the petrol found on Mosley's, and of the third accomplice, the person we believe took the petrol can away, he had Total on him. And the petrol found at the front door was containing Shell and Total additives. The petrol in the strimmer on the back garden confirms containing Texaco additives. Surprise, surprise, not the same at all. So the outcome, all three people were found guilty of murder. Basically, there was some sort of tryst going on between Philpott, Mosley, and his wife, Mairead. Mosley, I think, was co-opted into the crime by Philpott, and his wife was given to Mosley as a sweetener to keep him online. This was proven in court from covert recordings that happened after the event. The motive behind the crime was to get the children back, was to blame the ex-partner for the fire and get his children back to his home so he could continue to enjoy quite large benefits. He was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 15 years. His wife and Mosley were given 17 years, of which they will serve half. some of you that maybe have been involved in the world of domestic violence may be thinking Mairead was very controlled, and there's no doubt she had a difficult life. But the judge said there was lots of evidence of times when you have stood up to Mick and said no. You are able and have been able to say no to him many times. So she wouldn't accept the defence that she was bullied into this. She felt she was culpable. Mick served previously 7 years for attempted murder. He'd been jilted by a girlfriend while he was in the army, and he came back and stabbed her. And when her mother tried to intervene, he also stabbed her. So not a nice man. He had a conviction for common assault. He was on bail at the time of the fire for a road rage incident. Just not a nice guy. We started the investigation on the Friday, actually went to scene at 2 o'clock. We concluded on the 21st of May, so we were there for quite a long time. And we carried on in some way or shape or form the investigation for 8 months. We spent 500 hours doing this case, just as a fire team, and I'm pleased we did it. We found children dead in their beds, and we found smoke alarms were working. We couldn't understand it, so we asked Dave to look at it. Have you got time?
I'm just conscious of time, guys. I didn't want to get you to fall asleep in front of us as well. You sure? Everybody happy? It's only about 5 minutes. Right, so we've got a major problem now. We've got 6 children that are dead in the bed. We've got covert recordings of Mick Philpott talking to his wife when they think nobody's listening, saying to her, I cannot understand why the kids didn't get out of bed. Now, if he's saying that, we haven't got a clue, then everybody's starting to panic a bit. So, we had 2 hardwired interlink smoke detectors. By interlink, we mean they talk to each other. One goes off, they both go off. We had one at the base of the staircase, one at the head of the staircase, which is a standard fit for us. That's a council fit property. Hardwired, so they're running off the mains, so there can't be an argument with flat battery or anything like that. And we'd already had a specialist engineering who had decided that those were working at the time of the fire. And Philpott's original statement was that he was woken up by the alarms. In the initial video, you heard him on the 3-9's call saying, when he asked him what started the fire, we don't know, we were woken by the alarms. So the suggestion is the smoke alarms were working fine. The problem we've got is that none of the kids had moved. Not one single child had made any attempt to move from the bed. They were, for all intents and purposes, fast asleep. They just never woke up. We could find no reason for the children not waking up. As Matt said to you to start with, for the past 15, 20 years of our careers, we have been taught religiously smoke alarm saves lives. You have a smoke alarm, you will get out, no problem. It'll all be hunky-dory. And people were starting to ask questions of what's gone wrong. And more importantly, the defence was starting to ask questions about what's gone wrong. And we need a watertight case when we get to court to be able to defend our actions and what we've done. So what we did was we set up a study with Strathclyde University, and we actually looked at it from a scientific point of view. So the idea being, if we produce a paper at the end of it, we can use that paper as evidence in court to support Matt when he's giving evidence in the witness box. That was the cunning plan. But just to give you an idea, within Derbyshire, between 2010 and 2013, 36 people lost their lives in fires, domestic house fires within Derbyshire itself. Of that, 12 of those were children. So it is a major issue. It's not a small issue to us, it is a major issue. If we're now suggesting we've got issues with smoke alarms as well, we're starting to build a really, really bad picture. At the same time, and Matt's department that he's in charge of, they go out, they talk to vulnerable people, they fit smoke detectors. In the old days, we used to tell you to buy a detector. Then we went down the lines of giving you a detector. Now we go down the lines of knocking on your front door and actually putting it up for you. So make you safe. If we give it you, it comes out on a car boot sale in a week's time. So we physically fit them for you. So in the same period, the same 3 years that we lost all these lives, we actually fitted 36,000 detectors. Which is a big amount, it's a large amount. But we're still losing all these children in house fires. So we wanted to prove the hypothesis. Can we find out why the children didn't survive the fire? And then the secondary hypothesis from that, do children respond from sleep to a detector, smoke detector? There was anecdotal evidence in other countries that they don't. This isn't something that it is something we weren't aware of, but it isn't something that hadn't already been highlighted, if that makes sense. So we set off down the lines, a full-scale research project with Strathclyde University. The aim of the study was to work out whether or not children, if you look at the age group was all built around the Philpott's age group to be able to say we can directly assess it to that. We wanted to know whether there was any sex or age-related differences, whether the girl should have woke up, the boy shouldn't, or vice versa. And we also wanted to know whether any change of alarm, so any low-frequency alarms. I don't know how many of you have got children of school age. Certainly secondary school children, the favourite thing at the moment is to get a low-frequency ringtone on your phone. Most adults over the age of about 20, 21 can't hear low frequencies. So the kids are sat there in the class texting each other, setting everybody's phones off, and the teacher at the front of the class is talking away. Can't hear it. It's quite funny when you go in and catch them at it. So we wanted to see whether there's something around that. You're a teacher, aren't you? Yeah? Yeah. It's the in thing, secondary schools especially. Yeah. You can't hear it. There's a test on the internet. If you go on the internet, YouTube and Google and all that, just put low frequency hearing test, turn it on. I've done it with my son, and I'm sat there going, I can't hear anything. And he comes out the front room saying, what is that noise? Yeah, so it's all there. So we wanted to see whether that made any difference. So what we did, we allowed the children to go to sleep as normal. We obviously co-opted the parents on board. And then the parents were asked to push and hold the test button for a full minute. So to stand there basically with the detector sounding for a full minute at a time of their convenience. So we didn't say to them at a set time, we just said, because fire's random, and I know we've got issues with sleep patterns and all the rest of it, all we said to them was, you decide when you're going to do the test. Let the child go to bed. The only prerequisite is they are asleep when you do the test. Each child was repeated 6 times, so just to make sure it wasn't a one-off test that they slept through, the same child was tested 6 separate occasions. They had to have breaks within the test, so it wasn't every night for 6 nights. It was over a period of 3 or 4 weeks. Had to be on a school night, because we wanted the regular set sleep pattern. So there's no good doing it on a Saturday night when their eyes are kite and all the rest of it. And the children, the most important thing is the children were not to be told of the study until it completed. So if they didn't wake up for all 6, then you could tell them after the 6th test that they'd been tested. But you must not tell them during the test, because we didn't want to preempt them. A lot of firefighters, when we're on nights and you're dozing, you're always dozing with one ear listening. I mean, if you guys have been on call, things like that, you're listening for bleepers. You don't have a proper sleep. You've always got one ear open. So we wanted a complete blind test. We picked families with any children between the age of 13 and 5, as I say, to get into that age bracket. We made sure none of the children tested any sleep disorders or any issues that might throw or skew a test. And we made sure that we had standard domestic smoke detectors. So we're looking at a detector with a British kite mark on it, British standard kite mark, which says it will deliver 85 decibels at 1.5 metres when you press that button. So it's a standard fit. Guess what? I've been told you all that, and then knock on your door and say, can I wake your kids up at 3 o'clock in the morning? No. And then can I do it 6 times? No. I had major problems with the parents, particularly when I said to them, can I do it on a school night as well? They're absolute rebellion, because everybody felt they were going to wake the children up. There was no doubt about it. My sister-in-law bet me £10 that all her daughter's children would wake within 10 seconds of the initial thing. She's got 4 boys, and every single one of them slept through all 6 tests without steering. I was £10 better off. But the other issue was the fire service. The fire service was so confident, and me included. You know, we've been brought up in this generation that says smoke alarm saves lives. So we're sort of being told smoke alarms work; they don't fail. Now we're suggesting there might be a problem with them. So within the fire service community, there was a big backlash saying, "Oh no, you can't do this. You can't prove they don't work. You know that can't happen. You've got to sort of do it a different way." Just to give you an idea of the families that we used, the massive amount of fire service families, because they were bullied, basically, by me.
They can be told what to do.
Matt was one of the ones. I knocked on his door, you will and you must. To be fair, and I was probably a bit clinical at the start, Matt alluded to it, this incident traumatised quite a lot of firefighters in Derbyshire. It was amazing, probably one of the biggest jobs we've ever had, and it involves children, and all the children were lost. We never saved one of them, and that hurts. So there was a lot of firefighters out there that wanted to help understand why they didn't get out alive. We wanted something good to come from something bad, if that's the right way of saying it. The other thing we looked at was the time to the test. If you remember, we let people pick their own time, so we ended up with a series. We had one nice, kind gentleman set his alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning, got up, tested the smoke alarm, went back to bed again. And most of them were within the sort of 2, 3, 4 hour mark. So most of them let the child go to bed 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then when they went to bed, 11, midnight, they'd test the alarm on the way to bed. But that was the majority did that.
May I just interrupt you for a second, Dave? I think it's worth pointing out that, yes, this was a deliberate fire. Mick Philpott was convicted of manslaughter. Whether he wanted to hurt his children or not is not unknown.
I don't think he did.
But the children did attend schools, and they'd all had fire safety education in the classroom. So had they heard the smoke alarm, there is every chance, and we have evidence of this happening in other incidents, that they would have either shut themselves in the room and opened a window and put bedding down, or stayed under the smoke. They would have had a chance of survival had they woken up to the smoke alarm, because they would have known. We've checked the records, they'd all had the education, and children are pretty obedient in those sort of situations.
So just another one for us saying why we can't understand why they've not got out alive. The other thing we looked at was the distance. Now bear in mind, most smoke detectors are in a set position and your bedrooms are away from that position, so we wanted to record the distance from the head of the bed, so from where the child is sleeping to the nearest detector. The problem I had with this, when I actually put the data out and collected the data, I didn't specify whether it was in the same room. So a lot of the ones that are 2 metres, it's literally above their head. But it's 2 metres from bed to head, so it skewed it a little bit. But the majority, 3 to 4 metres away, which is about the distance from a bed to the bedroom door to the landing where the smoke detector is on the landing. The other thing we wanted to be absolutely sure of was the effect on the environment. There's been a lot of research about background noise and the human ear becoming accustomed to the background noise. So we wanted to look at doors first of all. So 3 of the tests were carried out with the doors open to the bedroom, and 3 of the tests were carried out with the doors shut. If you shut a door and then operate a fire alarm on the other side of that door, you will lose up to 15-20 decibels going through the door. So the decibel level at the bed now is severely dropped. So if it is an issue, it's going to be an issue at that point. We also looked at night lights. A lot of young children sleep with the light on, so we wanted to look at whether people that slept with the light on woke up easier or didn't wake up or whatever. 4 of the survey slept with lights on, and none of them woke to the alarm at all. So we discounted night lights as being an issue. We also looked at ambient noise. There's a lot of research being done, particularly in places like London, where you've got 24-hour living now, maybe in the centre of Nottingham even, where that ambient background noise is always there all the time. And there's a lot of research being done that says your alarm must be at least 20 to 30 decibels above that ambient noise in order for the human ear to discern between the two. So we looked at that as well, but we found no effect. It made no difference in our study. So, results then. 80% of the children slept through all 6 of the alarms. And it's even worse than that because of the breakdown, the demographics. 100% of the boys slept through. No single boy woke on any of the tests that we did. Bear in mind, we tested each child 6 times, so he's had 6 repeat tests straight through. The girls fared slightly better, which is why the test comes down a bit. Only 7, and they're all girls, woke at any time to any one of the tests. Only 2 woke to every single test. They were both girls, they were both over the age of 10, and they were both the oldest child in a family. So if you had a single girl, they don't woke up. If you had a girl with a boy or a girl older, they didn't wake up. But if they were the oldest in a series of siblings, they woke up every single time. Now the suggestion is that's due to the parenting responsibility starting to kick in as they grow older. 2, it's impossible to prove. It's just an anecdotal theory at this stage. But it did give us a bit of hope. We then looked at low frequency detectors. The basis for this was actually, it wasn't the mobile phone, that came out during the research, but we've had lots of issues with gangs on street corners. They put this thing called a mosquito in there, which older people can't hear, but the young gangs can, so it drives them mad. So it's like white noise constantly going all the time. So instead of gathering in shopping centres, things like that, they can't stand the noise, so they move on. But adults don't hear it, so it doesn't affect them. So we thought we need to try something. So we looked at, we picked 6 girls and 6 boys that had been on the original study and had slept through everything. And we then subjected them to what we call a low frequency test, which is a 520 hertz detector, which is currently on the market being sold as waking children up. It's also supposed to wake elder people up as well. 100% of the boys slept through again. 6 tests, low frequency, bang, not one of them moved. I was beginning to earn a lot of money here because I was going around saying I'll put a tenner on the table because this is the only way I could get parents to take the job on. I'll put a tenner on the table. If they wake up, keep the tenner. If they don't, I'll have my money back. And I was walking around with the same £10 note for ages. But the girls woke up, and this was the bizarre thing. All of the girls woke to a low frequency, but none of the boys woke at all. So there's something in low frequency. There's something there to cause that, but we didn't, in this particular study, we didn't take it any further. So conclusions then, we were able to produce a research project which Matt could go to court and then say, when asked by the defence, why did the children not get out of that fire, you could say safely, because they didn't respond to the smoke alarm. That also fits in with what Philpott's saying. He can't understand why that smoke alarm didn't go off either. Our hypothesis is that he had deliberately set that fire. He expected the alarms to go off. He expected all the kids to gather in one room because that's what they've been taught at school, how to get away from a fire. And then he had already placed that ladder around the back. He would run up the back ladder. Didn't need to take anything with him because Jade would be in that room. She'd be able to open the window. He would fetch all 6 children out onto the roof and he'd be the hero. And his ex-partner would get the blame and he would get custody of the children back. It's backfired on him because when he's got to the ladder and he's looked through the window, instead of seeing 6 kids, he's seen 1 kid fast asleep and the smoke level dropping. And at that point, it's gone wrong. That's where it's gone pear-shaped on him. Just to finish off, it does improve slightly with a low frequency, but it had no effect on boys at all. Just to put a rider on that, we've actually got research funding now, just so you don't go to bed tonight and be frightened to death. We are actually now currently working on the next stage, trying to find a sound that does wake children up. And we have now successfully woken 90% of the boys without a problem.
He's given me one of his prototype things. It's very
Oh,
annoying.
it brought it, didn't it?
But it's a smoke alarm that when it goes off, it's a woman's voice, and annoyingly, it's my boss's voice.
Take
And
any
it says,
volunteer over
"Wake
the
up,
restaurant,
you've
can't
got
you?"
a fire, wake up, you've got a fire." But the children appear to be responding to that voice activated rather than the beat.
There's
the actual
tons of
voice.
research that says mother's voice is the key. So when a mother shouts the child in a, I wouldn't like to use the word hysterical, but in a heightened alert. But you know what I'm trying to say. You know, it's not like, because you're going to say to me,
Stop digging, Dave.
Well, no, what I was thinking was, you're going to say to me, I shout him to get out of bed every morning and he don't get out, you know. But when you shout at him going, "Oh, my bum's burning, you need to come," they tend, the evidence is out there that they will wake up, they will respond. What we've tried to do is take it a step further and say, well, does it have to be mother or can it be a woman's voice? And we managed to get Matt's boss, bless her, to lay down a track where she sounds at heightened emergency alert.
Which is nearly every day, actually.
And it has worked. It is working. So within the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully, we will solve the issue.
I'm sorry that we've taken
We're worried
on.
about time. That was the thing.
We can take questions if you want, but equally we know we've taken up a lot of your time.
Pub's open.
Thank you very much. That was absolutely fascinating listening to that. Tragic, but really interesting. Was your study that you did, was it up to 13 years, did you say?
Only because we were aiming it at the Philpott. The
Yeah.
study that we're now doing is up to infinity, in fact. There's no end limit.
Right, that's great. So have you found, I suppose it's early days, but have you found any correlation with older years yet?
Not yet.
No.
My son, aged 15, I have quite a small house, and it's only 2-bedroomed house, and Matt will tell you, our pages are loud. When they go off, they're loud. I have to have it on the landing, because if it's in the bedroom, I'm on the ceiling for 5 minutes. My alarm can go off. I can get up, turn it off, ring control, get the job, go out to the job, come back, ring control, go back to bed. He'll get up in the morning and he won't have heard anything. So, but it is also, there is also a suggestion of linking it to young drivers. You know, we have issues with young male drivers, dangerous driving. The issue we think is around the frontal lobes. Without getting too technical, your frontal lobes are monitoring your surroundings. There's a breakdown between your ears, so your ears will hear the alarm, they'll send the signal to your frontal lobes, and your frontal lobes will say, "I'm not bothered, don't worry about it." In the same way as the young male driver, and you're sat in the passenger seat, is hurtling towards a right-hand bend, his eyes are saying, "You ain't going to make this," but the brain's saying, "Don't worry about it, we'll be fine." And you're sat in the passenger seat like this. So it's all linked. It's finding that age. It may come out, it may not. I mean, my mission in life is to walk away from the fire service having found a product that will wake children up. Since this fire, I've attended 4 separate fires where multiple child deaths, and at least 2 of them are the direct result of fire alarms not waking them up. Definitely.
Could I ask very quickly, sorry, as well? You said you looked at low frequency, and that seems to be more effective with girls. Have you looked at the opposite end, high frequency at all?
Well, a normal smoke detector is high frequency.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay,
3,000 hertz is a normal detector.
Right.
So that's having no effect whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we've gone low because that's what anecdotal was. And it is working, to be fair. Low
Yeah.
frequency does work.
Thank you.
This lady there.
Go on. Right, there is no, just to put you at ease now, in case I've frightened you, because my boss here will shout at me if we have. There is no evidence whatsoever anywhere in the world on any research study that's ever been done that says a normal compos mentis adult over 18, over 21,
Who can hear?
who can hear normally will not respond to a working smoke alarm.
The British Standard says the standard states that it's designed to wake a family up. So when Dave's now questioned that standard, but the answer is, hang on a minute, it's to wake a family up. So the inference is it's to wake adults up. So the adults will then go and wake the kids up. But I mean, I've got a teenage boy. I also got a social life, so sometimes I'll leave him at home on his own. He's a 16-year-old. So I have to rethink that strategy now.
So the issue for us is not waking adults up. The issue, the real bad issue for us is when you go out, say tonight, you've come here tonight, you've got a babysitter at home with your children, that's fine, no problem. You call in at the local pub on the way back and you have a few more glasses of wine. There is tons of research that says for every unit of alcohol you have, your response is starting to wane. So you've now got a situation where you come in quite merry, you give your childminder a tenner and you send them on the way. You are now not going to respond to that smoke detector when it goes off, but your child isn't going to respond to it either. So now you are at risk. But that is alcohol-induced. That is not a normal compos mentis adult.
It's cheerful, isn't it?
If there's evidence to say that the current smoke alarms will wake adults but not children, and we've looked at low frequency that doesn't wake boys but will wake girls, isn't there an argument then for a modulated frequency that actually would benefit everyone?
Yeah. Australia's tried to apply that. There's one called a vehicle reversing alarm. I don't know if anybody's ever heard it. It's 3 short bleeps. It's called a temporal 3. Instead of the constant beep, 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 beep of a smoke alarm, it's 3 short bleeps followed by a gap, 3 short bleeps. It sounds like there's a vehicle reversing into your kitchen. Yeah? That is supposedly a better response. It still doesn't wake the children up. What my mission now is, hopefully, is that we will find what wakes the children up and then we will build it into a normal alarm. The end game for us is not to reinvent the wheel. We're not reinventing smoke alarms. What we're going to do is say, smoke alarms wake adults up, that's fine. We're now going to give you a different sounder unit to put in the child's room, which will wake the child as well. That's the theory that we're working to.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes, sir.
Thank you, that's fascinating. It's interesting to know that the vulnerability to sleep through anything.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It's that fight or flight syndrome. We just go to sleep.
Just a bit I'm interested. Can you just elaborate on what that sort of visibility is like for those guys going in on that first entrance?
For the firefighters?
Yeah, the guys with the masks on.
It's not good. It was the middle of the night, but there's enough street light, and you've got a fair bit of illumination from the flame. But as soon as you start putting water on the flame, you're creating lots of steam. So you've got physical steam on your mask. So that's a hammer. So you have to try to wipe it, and there's an awful lot of smoke being produced. Even though it's gone up the staircase, it hits the ceiling and then starts to bank down again. So visibility would have been 0. We train our firefighters. I was an instructor for a number of years.
Yeah. He's the best man to answer this question.
We train our guys in how to move around and search in smoke and darkness. I mean, vision's only one sense, isn't it? So we use touch and feel, communication and listening. And they will search in a very methodical way. They'll do something called a BA shuffle, so they're not hurting themselves. And they'll do particular search patterns because they won't have been able to see anything until they ventilate, until they open the windows. It would have been impossible to see. It is not like Coronation Street or EastEnders.
That's the problem. You look at London's burning, things like that, and you see lots of flame. Most firefighters can't even see the fire when they're in the same room as the fire because the smoke is so low.
If we, had a door was shut, had a fire in here, the smoke would go to the ceiling. It then mushrooms across, and then it starts to come back down again, and it just obliterates your vision. And then you couple that with steam. Water changes from water to steam 16,000 times. So put water on a hot fire, you've soon got a big steam cloud. Again, visibility is 0.
Hello. Could I ask a question? the opportunity to ask my medical colleagues, actually. We were of the era where we worked a lot at night as junior doctors and got bleeps and crash calls and things. And I know there was one occasion when my bleep went off for a crash call at the medical SHO and I turned my alarm off and went back to sleep. But I wonder whether other doctors who had bleeps and night calls had issues with waking up. And I want to congratulate Paul Eddington, who came to me at 1 in the morning when I had baby number 3. He woke up, he came in his suit. But did anyone else?
I used to sleep in it.
But thank you. So it worked for him. But have other people had any issues?
It is actually quite common to do that. Firefighters sometimes will be in a really, really deep sleep when the bells go, and you end up leaving them behind. So it does happen. My wife famously years ago, when we had our child, we had the child in the Moses basket side of the bed, and he's crying. I wake her up, do the honourable thing, wake her up, say the baby's crying. She reaches in the pram, feels for the dummy, feels for the hole, sticks it in, baby stops crying. We go back to sleep. We wake up in the morning, he's lying on his side with a dummy stuck in his ear.
It happens to me. Well, not anymore. We've got these new pages. I can't make it.
God,
I can't make it go off. It will deafen you. But before we used to have quite a nice little beeping page. So what would happen is my wife would, as a social worker, she's very liberal and kind. She'd stroke me gently and say, "Matt, your pager," and I'd wake up. Oh, okay. I'd put my glass on. I'd go to the fire. Now this thing is responsible for 2 broken ribs because when this goes off, she's, "Matt, your bloody pager's going off," and she hits me, and that's wakes me up. My wife.
There's been a lot of research done around alarms and alarm noises, particularly in shopping malls and things like that. And you very often see all these research tests where they invite a group of people in, don't tell them, they make some study up, but the actual study is how they will respond to a fire alarm sounding. 90% of people will not react to a fire alarm sounding in daytime, but they will react to a voice message saying you need to leave, there's a fire. So it's almost like we're geared up to accept noises. But when noise is delivered with a message, the message is accepted and off you go. So whether your pager should say wake up, I don't know.
Well, mine does.
Not a question for the speakers, but I do see 2 or 3 pathologists here. And as a retired physician, I want to know what actually kills people from smoke inhalation.
Well,
let the pathologist
sitting in front of me.
I'm going to tell you what we think.
The assumption is it's hypoxia. I don't know, Jim, if you've got any other comments.
It's quite interesting to note because if it's a normal case and they do a normal tox screen, they'll come back with carbon monoxide levels, but we ask them to do an enhanced tox screen, they very often come back with hydrogen cyanide and stuff like that, which is all built in. We did a bit of research last year around movement and carbon monoxide levels, because one of the theories we had is if you're asleep in bed and you just normal breathing, the levels creep up until they kill you, and that's it. Whereas if you're running around and breathing it in and taking a gobful and working it through your system, the levels are a lot higher before you actually keel over. And we've not actually done it as a proper research project, but we've got quite a lot of anecdotal evidence of that being the case.
But that's the carbon monoxide sort of slicks your blood a bit. And there was a train of thought when we wanted to take blood samples of survivors of fires or people that we thought might have been perpetrators. Don't bother if they're smokers because they'll already have an elevated level. But the science is challenging that now, and we think we can by using blood samples we can actually tell how long somebody's possibly been in a fire, regardless of whether they're smoking.
We get a lot of people that say they've not had any involvement in this fire, they've been nowhere near it, but in reality they've got soot coming out their nostrils and their eyes are all black. So we know they've been in the fire. We just need evidence to prove it. So that's why that research is going. Yes, sir. Just don't ask me anything about sport.
And you, you've got a mate who's an immunologist. they can also do a PhD on a subject that I'll tell you about. There's something called an EpiPen, which guys who are allergic to something, call it peanuts, have to inject themselves with adrenaline. In London, they taught the mothers of children who are allergic to something longer than normal. And then they tested the mothers 6 months later with the noise going on in the background, which was of the child having an attack, and then they had to inject a doll that was a stimulated baby lying next to them. Half the mothers, on a longer test, training them, half the mothers injected themselves in the thumb. Yeah, that's the first thing. Secondly, the pen that was designed was a standard pen of a needle that was a given 2 centimeters, let's say. So for sometimes that person that they were injecting, that needle was far too short. Other times it was just right, and other times it was just too long. So I suggest you divorce the wife you've got, marry an immunologist, and get her to do a PhD about adjusting the pen and training the mother better than she is at the moment.
What you don't know is my wife is an immunologist. She's 10 years older than me. She's just retired from Kingsville Hospital from immunology.
Well, she can do a PhD in her spare time then.
That's what I'm going to go and beat her up now, so you need to sort it. Anything else? Anybody got any other questions? I'm conscious of time. I don't want to waste your time.
I would just like to ask Dr. Ramiseth to give a vote of thanks for this tremendous evening.
President Helen, it's a privilege for me to propose a vote of thanks to our speakers tonight. It's been a real treat. We have been at the edge of our seats all evening. The whole talk, the whole presentation has been so well constructed. The death of a child in any experience in life is always tragic, but losing 6 children in a fire is so traumatic. And our hearts go out to the firemen and indeed the police and the ambulance and anybody else who has to experience death of a child and cope with such difficult situations. But it came across to me that they are dedicated and devoted emergency service who have such attention to detail that they leave nothing, no stone unturned to help and keep us safe in our beds wherever they can help us. The response time was fantastic from the police and from the fire brigade. And the amount of work that they did to prove how the fire was started and how the sequence of events took place was so beautifully introduced by you, Matt, and Dave. You've done an excellent job. And what really amazed me was the Strathclyde study. It has been a revelation that we are all sleeping in our beds, safe in the knowledge that the fire alarms will wake up our teenagers or our younger kids. And now we know that that's false security. And I'm so glad that there is so much research gone into it. And you really deserve a PhD on the subject. It's very, very impressive. So on behalf of the Society, I would like to thank you, Matt, and you, Dave, for giving up your time all the way from Alfreton and Chesterfield to come and talk to us and illuminating us tonight with so much knowledge, laced with a bit of humor here and there, and keeping us at the edge of our seats. So I'll ask the Society and our guests to show our appreciation in the usual way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.